Something was being built for you while you were busy surviving, and it is almost ready. Sit down for this one. Not because what follows requires effort, but because it deserves your stillness. The particular stillness of someone who has been moving for so long, managing for so long, holding things together with such quiet and unrewarded consistency that the act of simply stopping and receiving something feels in itself like a form of courage. So stop just for now, just for this. um, there is a plan that operates beneath the visible surface of a life, not announced, not explained, not laid out in the kind of legible sequential logic that the conscious mind finds reassuring. It moves instead in the specific, unhurried way that deep water moves, with a current that isn't visible from the shore, that doesn't declare its direction, that simply continues, with the patient certainty of something that knows exactly where it is going, even when the person being carried by it has long since stopped believing that going anywhere was still possible. Virgo, something has been moving beneath the surface of your life for longer than you know, in directions you weren't watching, toward outcomes you may have stopped imagining. And the movement, quiet, persistent, entirely indifferent to whether or not you could see it, has not stopped, not once, not even in the seasons that felt most like stillness, not even in the long, exhausting stretches where nothing visible was changing, where the effort you were putting in seemed to disappear into a void that offered nothing in return, where the gap between what you were working toward and what was actually materializing felt less like a delay and more like a verdict. It was not a verdict, it was preparation. Let me tell you something about Virgo energy, not as a label, not as a category, but as a specific quality of interior life that some people carry in ways that are both extraordinary and at times quietly devastating. The particular combination of precision and feeling, the ability to see clearly, more clearly than most, both what is and what could be, and to live perpetually in the charged and uncomfortable gap between the two. The tendency to hold yourself to a standard that no external force requires of you, that you have imposed on yourself out of some deep, wordless understanding that what you are capable of is considerably more than what you have so far been given the conditions to produce. The exhausting, relentless, entirely private project of a person who has been doing extraordinary work in ordinary circumstances without the recognition that work of that quality deserves for longer than they should have had to. That work has not been invisible. Even when it felt invisible, even in the seasons when the only witness to it was you, in the quiet hours before the performance of the day began and after it ended. Something has been watching the accumulation of that effort with considerably more attention than the visible world has been offering. And the accumulation, every unglamorous, uncelebrated, privately significant moment of choosing to continue when continuing offered nothing immediate in return, has been building into something that the surface of your life has not yet caught up to reflecting, something that is right now in this specific window of time that this reading is circling closer to manifesting in the visible world than anything you have worked toward has ever been before. Uh, this reflection invites you to consider, what would it mean for you in the most interior and private sense to fully accept that the difficulty of recent seasons was not evidence of failure, but the specific and necessary cost of a preparation you couldn't see the shape of while you were inside it? Because Virgo energy, at its most characteristic, tends to internalize difficulty as information about personal inadequacy. When things don't materialize on the timeline that the precise pattern recognizing Virgo mind has determined they should, the explanation that arrives most readily is not, the timing isn't right yet. It is, I haven't done enough. I haven't been enough. Something about my approach, my effort, my fundamental worth as a person producing results in the world is insufficient. And that story, however sincerely held, however intelligently constructed from the available evidence, is not the truth of what has been happening. It is simply the most painful interpretation of a situation that has a considerably less damning explanation. Picture a field in the last days of winter, nothing visible above the surface, nothing to suggest to the casual observer that anything is alive in there, that anything is preparing, pressing, organizing itself in the cold and the dark beneath the frozen ground, building toward the break that will come not when conditions are perfect, but when the preparation has reached the point where emergence is simply the next thing that happens. The field looks empty. The field is not empty. The field has never, for a single moment, been empty. It has simply been doing the invisible work that visible results require, and doing it, as all genuine preparation does, entirely out of sight. You are that field, Virgo, and the ground is beginning to soften. This reflection invites you to consider, where specifically have you been mistaking the invisible nature of your preparation for the absence of progress, and what would it change about how you are currently holding your own life if you understood completely and without reservation that preparation and stagnation are not the same thing, even when they feel identical from the inside? Let me talk about abundance, because this reading carries it, and I want to be honest about what that means and what it doesn't mean. Abundance for Virgo is not a simple subject. It is not the uncomplicated arrival of good things in the life of someone who simply waited for them. It is considerably more layered than that. It is the specific, hard-won, almost reluctant opening of a person who has spent years being extraordinarily capable in circumstances that consistently under-rewarded that capability, who has learned through the specific education of that experience to hold their expectations low enough that disappointment remains survivable, who has developed, as an act of genuine self-protection, a relationship with their own potential that is simultaneously deeply respectful of it and quietly terrified of allowing themselves to fully believe in it, because believing in it and then watching it go unrealized has, at certain points in the past, been more than they felt equipped to absorb. That protective lowering of expectation is not weakness, it is intelligence. It is the entirely reasonable response of a person who has been operating in environments that were not built for what they carry, who has been offering extraordinary things to contexts that were not equipped to receive them at their full value. But intelligence applied past its useful edge becomes its own limitation. And the edge for many Virgos watching this may have been reached. The protection may have become, quietly and without announcement, the very thing that stands between you and the fullness of what is now finally available to you. Some of you watching this have been sitting on the edge of something significant, a decision, an opportunity, a version of your own life that you have been able to see clearly in the precise Virgo way that allows you to see things clearly but have been unable to fully commit to, because committing to it would require believing without sufficient evidence that this time is genuinely different from the times before it. That this attempt, this opening, this particular convergence of effort and opportunity and interior readiness will produce a result that the previous attempts did not. And the evidence for that belief is not yet entirely visible. And Virgo, more than almost any other energy, requires evidence before it will fully commit. This reflection invites you to consider, where has the requirement for sufficient evidence before full commitment been protecting you from genuine risk? And where has it been protecting you from genuine reward? And do you know, in the honest and unguarded part of yourself, which one is happening right now? Because this is the part that I want you to sit with carefully and without rushing. The plan that has been operating beneath the surface of your life, the one that has been moving in directions you weren't watching toward outcomes. You may have stopped imagining that plan has a financial dimension, a material dimension, the dimension that Virgo, for all its precision and capability, has sometimes struggled to fully claim, not because you don't deserve it, not because you haven't earned it, but because there is a specific, deeply Virgo tendency to be extraordinarily generous with your capability in exchange for considerably less than it is worth to accept the terms available rather than holding out for the terms deserved, because holding out requires a belief in your own value that the difficult seasons have made it increasingly hard to maintain at full strength. The terms are changing, not because the external world has suddenly become more generous or more fair or more inclined to offer Virgo energy what it deserves without being asked, but because something in you is changing. Something in the way you hold yourself in relation to what you've built, what you know, what you are capable of producing in the world. Something in that relationship is shifting quietly and with gathering momentum toward a more honest accounting, toward a willingness to charge the full price, to ask for the full value, to occupy the full space that your capability has always deserved to occupy, without the familiar reflexive apology that tends to precede every Virgo claim to something significant. This reflection invites you to consider, what is the full, honest, undefended value of what you bring, not the discounted version, not the version you've learned to offer in environments that couldn't accommodate the real number, and what would it require of you internally and practically to begin insisting on that value in every context that currently underestimates it. Let me tell you what amazing actually looks like. For Virgo, not the dramatic cinematic version, not the sudden windfall, the overnight transformation, the single event that renders all previous difficulty retroactively meaningful in a neat and satisfying narrative arc. The real version, the Virgo version, which is slower than that and more textured than that and more deeply satisfying than that, precisely because it is built rather than received, earned rather than granted, constructed from the specific raw material of everything you have already done, survived, learned, and integrated in the long and largely unwitnessed seasons that preceded it. Amazing for Virgo looks like the right door opening at the right moment for someone who has been standing in the right hallway for long enough that they had started to wonder if the doors in it were decorative. It looks like a recognition, professional, financial, relational, or some combination of all three, that finally, precisely, accurately reflects the quality of what you have been bringing. It looks like circumstances beginning to catch up to capability, like the material world beginning to match the interior world, like the gap, that specific, exhausting, perpetual Virgo gap between what is and what could be, beginning for the first time in a long time to close. And it feels like something specific too, something that is easy to miss if you're not watching for it. It feels like ease appearing without fanfare in places that have only ever known effort, like a door that swings open instead of resisting, like a conversation that goes somewhere you didn't have to force it to go, like a number that arrives and is, for once, not a source of anxiety, but a confirmation of something, small things perhaps, individually unremarkable, but accumulating quietly and with gathering momentum into a pattern that the precise Virgo eye will recognize once it allows itself to look as the early signature of something that is building into exactly what this reading is circling. This reflection invites you to consider what small, individually unremarkable shifts have been accumulating in your life recently that you have been too exhausted or too guarded or too trained in the discipline of not getting your hopes up to allow yourself to read as a pattern, and what would it mean to let yourself read them as exactly that? Some of you watching this are standing at the threshold of a chapter that is genuinely, substantively different from the chapters that preceded it. Not because the difficulty is over difficulty for Virgo, is not a temporary condition, but a permanent feature of a life lived at the level of genuine capability in a world that does not always make space for it. But because the relationship between the difficulty and the reward is shifting, because the work is beginning to find its correct audience, because the capability is beginning to find its correct context, because the version of your life that your precise, uncompromising, endlessly patient interior vision has always been able to see is beginning slowly, materially, undeniably, to become the version that is actually visible from the outside. The power is yours. It always has been. Not the power to force the plan into a shape or a timeline that suits the impatient mind, but the power to remain open to it, to stop interpreting the accumulation of invisible work as evidence of failure, to let the ease, when it begins to appear, be received without immediately suspecting it, to occupy your own value fully, without apology, without the reflexive discount that has been costing you in ways you are only beginning to accurately account for. to allow what is being built for you to actually arrive without dismantling it in the final moments before the threshold, out of the habit of a person who has been disappointed before and who has learned to protect themselves from hope by arriving at the end before it does. God's plan, Virgo. This is about to be amazing for you. Not eventually now, in the softening of the frozen ground, in the accumulation of small ease in places that have only known effort, in the gap beginning to close between what you are and what the world is finally, belatedly beginning to reflect back to you, in the preparation that has been happening beneath the surface, patient and certain and entirely committed to its own completion, in all the seasons you were too busy surviving to notice it was underway. Trust yourself with this. The plan that has been operating beneath your life without your knowledge and without your permission has been more attentive to what you deserve than you have been willing to be to yourself. Let that be enough for now to keep moving, keep building, keep bringing the full and undefended and completely extraordinary value of what you are to every context that is ready to receive it. Before you go, I want to hear from you in the comments. What is the one area of your life where you have been chronically undervaluing what you bring, accepting less than you deserve, offering more than is being matched, and what would change, practically and immediately, if you decided today to stop doing that? And what does amazing actually look like for you? Specifically, not the generic version, not the version that sounds right when said aloud, but the private, honest, entirely personal version that lives in the part of you that still knows what you actually want. Drop it below. I read every single word, and nothing shared here goes unacknowledged. See you